Welcome to the Darkest Region Lock Cases, Volume 1. What are region lock cases? Region lock cases are cases that are known within the country it happened in, but not really outside of it. In most circumstances, these cases are only covered in their local language and not by international media outlets. Therefore, as an outsider, you basically never hear of it. In this format, I'll try to compile region lock cases from all over the world. While some might be familiar to you, others will be unknown. Starting off with Nikos Doris.
Το χτύπησα άσχημα στο κεφάλι του και η υπευθεία εισαγγελέως.
Σοκ έχει προκαλέσει στο Πανελλήνιο η ανατριχιαστική αποκάλυψη του ανθρωπόμορφου κτήνος που βίασε και
Αγγελάκο, όχι μου στη δουλειά μου. Δούλευα να σπάει να προσπάθησα μήπως ήταν ζωντανό. Δεν μου καταλάβαινα.
Έτσι πιστεύω, έτσι βρέθηκε, έτσι πιστεύω όμως εγώ δεν έχω.
The case of Nikos Doris is probably one of the most unbelievable cases I've ever covered. It has a lot of plot twists, and we aren't yet sure if the one who was caught is actually the culprit. This is also considered one of the most twisted crimes in the history of Greece, as the culprit made multiple TV appearances while the case was being investigated and the whole country was still shocked by the incident. It was New Year's Eve of 1993 when 6-year-old Nikos Doris suddenly went missing. The boy's parents and siblings became worried and quickly went to the police station to report it. While the police usually wait 48 hours before starting a search for a missing person, this time, because the boy was just 6 years old, the cops, along with the help of the local community, began looking for Nikos immediately. However, he was nowhere to be found. Media began picking up the case, and it quickly became a sensation throughout the whole country of Greece. The boy's father, Manolis Doris, would make numerous appearances on TV, crying and begging for his son's return.
Έτσι πιστεύω, έτσι βρέθηκε, έτσι πιστεύω όμως εγώ δεν έχω κάνει. Δεν ξέρω.
Ο άλλος ή αυτός δηλαδή τα έκανε αυτά τα πράγματα.
Δεν ξέρω.
Τώρα για ό,τι έκανες το μετάνιωσες, αυτό που έκανες το μετάνιωσες.
Εάν το έχω κάνει, το έχω μετά.
Αγγελάκι μου γιατί. Δεν τον είδα, δεν το είδα καθόλου.
Χτες δεν τον είδατε, χτες το απόγευμα τίποτα.
Όχι ήμουν στη δουλειά μου, δούλευα να σπάει να πάνε.
Despite the police's best efforts, they were unable to find Nikos until Manolis discovered the lifeless body of the young boy himself. The body was hidden in a fence surrounding a field, a place where no one would think to even look. The fence wasn't very far from the house. The autopsy report revealed that Nikos had been abused and most likely died from asphyxiation during the assault. Severe crimes like this aren't a usual occurrence in the small country of Greece, so naturally what followed was a media frenzy. Manolis quickly became a media sensation, being the tragic father of the story, shouting and crying in front of the cameras, vowing to take revenge for the death of his son. The whole nation of Greece developed sympathy for him, and everyone wanted justice to be served. But this was all about to completely change.
Ένα και συγκεκριμένο άτομο για πρώτη δόση, γιατί πριν 2 χρόνια είχα την ίδια ακριβώς κατάσταση, αλλά με λίγο, δηλαδή, όχι πολύ οδυνηρό πράγμα.
Manolis was a Cyprus War veteran, was known to suffer from a form of PTSD, and was even once hospitalized for it. And throughout the whole investigation, nobody really questioned him, as they all thought it was unlikely that he was the one who killed his own son. The police didn't even consider him a suspect, and naturally investigations zeroed in on him. However, soon police began to notice that Manolis' stories weren't really adding up. Adding to the suspicion was the fact that Manolis was the one to find Nikos' body from a place that no one would think to search, unless they already knew it was there. Shortly after, Manolis confessed to the crime, stating that he did it out of rage. According to him, that day Nikos arrived home late, which completely outraged him. During a fit of rage, he took him to the attic, where he assaulted and killed him. His words after his arrest were, "A rare illness possesses me. It transforms me. I had seizures and couldn't see in front of me. Anyone with my condition might have done the same thing."
Χτύπησα άσχημα στο κεφάλι του και μου πέθανε. Αυτό έγινε.
This outraged the public. People began protesting, demanding that he be given the death penalty, even though it wasn't allowed in Greece at that time. His trial became one of the most media-covered trials Greece had ever seen. No lawyer wanted to take on his case, so he was assigned a public defender. However, this wasn't the end. During the trial, Manolis claimed to be innocent and instead blamed his wife and her supposed lover for the death of his child. There was also evidence that the hairs found on the body of the young boy didn't match with that of Manolis, implying that the one who assaulted Nikos wasn't him. It's possible that, due to media pressure, the police forced Manolis to falsely confess to the crime he never committed, in order to close the case quickly. His existing mental challenges might have made him even more susceptible to this pressure. Despite his lawyer's request for a psychiatric evaluation during the trial, it never happened. Both his wife, whom he tried to blame during the trial, and his oldest son insist to this day that he was innocent. According to them, the culprit was a well-known child predator in the area, who was wealthy and untouchable by the police. Because of this, they wanted to put the blame on someone as soon as possible, and the father was an easy target. She also claimed that the private investigator who had found evidence related to the boy's murder was found dead in his apartment in 2005. The police asserted it was a burglary gone wrong, but they never provided any evidence to support their claims regarding who was responsible. When Manolis was arrested, the inmates of the local jail began protesting, demanding that he should not be jailed with them. Therefore, he was moved to a maximum security prison where he was badly beaten, lynched, and continuously assaulted. While in prison, the inmates sought to avenge the boy's death and tormented him daily. He had to be frequently moved, and 2 years after his son's death, he was found hanged in a cell with a TV cord. Whether he did it to avoid the daily torture or out of guilt, or if someone took his life, remains unknown.
Δεν το είδα καθόλου.
Χτες δεν τον είδατε, χτες το απόγευμα τίποτα?
Όχι, ήμουν στη δουλειά μου. Δούλευα να πάει να πάνε.
The Görde murders were a series of double homicides that occurred in the Görde State Forest in Lower Saxony, in western Germany, during the summer of 1989. At that time, a heatwave struck the country, resulting in dry conditions for weeks. Consequently, the traces of the crime weren't destroyed for a very long time, but because of the prolonged and intense heat, the mummification process of the corpses was significantly accelerated, hindering the investigation at later stages. Within a short time span, 2 couples fell victim to gruesome murders in the same forest area, likely by the same perpetrator. The second double murder occurred while authorities were still collecting traces from the first one, merely 800 meters away. The case quickly captured the attention of the media, becoming a nationwide sensation due to its bizarre and unusual nature. On May 21st, 1989, married couple Ursula and Peter Reinhold were traveling from Hamburg-Bergedorf to Görde for a walk when they entered a forest in Jagen 138, possibly to sunbathe or have a picnic. Sadly, the couple was killed on the spot, and their bodies were not left at the scene. The perpetrator moved the victims near a large pine tree and hid them there. 7 weeks later, on July 12th, 3 blueberry pickers discovered the victims' bodies. However, due to the high temperatures, the bodies were significantly decomposed, mummified, and mostly skeletal due to animals eating them. The perpetrator also took a picnic basket and the couple's car keys with him. He used the vehicle to flee from the scene and left the car 300 meters away from the train station in Winsen an der Luhe, a small town in the so-called Hamburg Bacon Belt. After discovering the bodies, the berry pickers went to inform the police. However, on their way there, they encountered a brown-haired, strongly built man in his 40s, carrying a suspicious bag. The Criminal Investigation Department suspects that this individual may have been the perpetrator, possibly searching for other victims in Görde at that time. The exact cause of death couldn't be determined at the crime scene or during the subsequent autopsy due to the condition of the bodies. However, it was clear that it was the result of a crime. On the same day, Ursula and Peter's bodies were discovered. 46-year-old Ingrid Warmbier and her lover, 43-year-old Bernd Michael Köpping, also fell victim to the perpetrator. They were a couple from nearby Bad Bevensen who had arrived after lunch, seemingly on an outing. They parked on the side of a road near the Rüten Forester's Lodge and walked deep into the forest. Unbeknownst to them at that point, they were slowly walking towards their own demise. The couple was attacked by the perpetrator, who apparently threatened them with a firearm and bound their hands and feet with leukoplast tape. Both of them were forced to lie face down, and the perpetrator strangled the male victim, killing him from behind by shooting him in the head. He then struck the woman's skull and caused severe wounds to her chest. The blouse was pushed to the level of the bra, which was cut, and both victims were shot in the head. The perpetrator then stole a camera and their car keys before fleeing from Görde. 2 weeks later, on 27th of July, when police officers were investigating Reiner's case, they accidentally discovered the bodies of Kepping and Warmbier by chance. According to the investigators, the culprit committed the second double murder at a time when the police were at the scene of the incident, only a few meters away. However, despite the close range of the two sites, gunshots could not be heard due to depressions in the land. Immediately after the discovery of the first crime, a special commission of detectives was formed, and a facial sketch of the culprit was created and published, with a reward of 50,000 Deutsche Mark on any information. The culprit was mentally ill and likely saw pleasure from committing crimes. Despite the police's best efforts, there seemed to be no clue whatsoever in finding the culprit until something really odd happened. In Wales, a similar double homicide had occurred in June of the same year, for which Sean Cooper, a 64-year-old man, was arrested in May 2009. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The Dixon couple happened on a camping trip at Little Haven when they were shot at close range. The corpses were found near the road, with the husband's hands tied behind his back. This was extremely similar to what happened in the Görde murders. A day before the incident, people noticed a 40-year-old man, whose description was similar to that of the alleged Görde perpetrator, near the site of the crime. However, there was no strong connection or link found between the Görde incident and the Cooper incident of Wales. In 1993, another suspect emerged as a potential culprit. A man overheard another individual threatening his wife during a conflict, mentioning the Görde case and suggesting she might meet a similar fate if she continued to cheat on him. The witness reported this to the authorities, and surprisingly, the suspect bore many similarities to the supposed culprit. He possessed a firearms permit for a small caliber gun, the same weapon used in the second double murder case, and scarily matched the appearance of the prepared facial sketch. He was also from the area and had local knowledge as a forester. After several months of further investigation, police obtained a search warrant and raided the man's house. However, despite many hours of interrogation of the suspect and his wife, no definitive proof against the forester emerged. The special commission was later dissolved, as they didn't find the culprit. Additionally, in 2014, authorities announced that the case wouldn't be reopened, leaving it unsolved to this date. This case is really mysterious. On June 20, 2006, Frauke Liebs, a 20-year-old German nursing student, suddenly disappeared under mysterious circumstances. After her sudden disappearance, a series of bizarre calls were made from her cell phone to her family, all with Frauke behaving erratically. What follows is a case that is considered one of the most twisted and brutal crimes in the history of Germany. On the day of her disappearance, Frauke met her mother and roommate for dinner at a restaurant. Nothing seemed odd until, suddenly during the meal, her phone rang. She received a text from a friend who had arranged to meet her at an Irish pub in Paderborn city center to watch a 2006 football World Cup match with other friends. After dinner, her mother and roommate drove her to the pub, where she arrived at around 9 p.m. During the match between Sweden and England, she sent multiple texts to an acquaintance before her phone battery completely ran out. She borrowed and later returned a battery from a friend. After the match ended at around 11 p.m., Frauke left the pub alone and likely walked the 1.2 kilometers home, as she only had about €5 with her in her pockets. However, shockingly, she never really returned to her apartment. At around 1 a.m., her roommate received a strange text from Frauke indicating, quote, she would be delayed. On June 21, the next day, Frauke Liebs did not show up for work. When she wasn't found in her apartment either, her mother reported her missing that same day. After this, a series of bizarre calls began, all seemingly made by Frauke herself from her cell phone. However, due to the extremely bizarre nature of the calls, no one was able to comprehend what exactly was happening. Over the course of the next 4 days, from June 22 to June 25, Frauke made brief daily phone calls to her roommate. These calls, typically less than a minute each, occurred late in the evening, except for one in the afternoon. After one call, Frauke's brother briefly managed to call her back. During these calls, Frauke provided little information, vaguely hinting at her return, but often responding with absurd or cryptic remarks. On June 26, there was no call. A sudden silence that was broken by the fifth and final call that came on June 27 at 11:29 p.m. This time, the call lasted over 5 minutes. Frauke spoke to her roommate and sister via speakerphone, initially whispering yes when asked if she was being held against her will, but then loudly saying no twice. After this call, all contacts with her were abruptly cut. Investigations revealed her phone had been located in various Paderborn industrial parks during these calls. On October 4th, 2006, after almost 2 months of Frauke's sudden disappearance, a hunter discovered the lifeless body of Frauke Liebs approximately 15 kilometers away from Paderborn, hidden behind a tree trunk under fir thickets. The body was badly decomposed and almost skeletal, because of which the exact cause of death could not be determined. Frauke was found wearing the same clothes she wore on the same day of her disappearance, which included blue jeans, a red top, and white sneakers. However, her mobile phone, black handbag, purse, and wristwatch were missing. Forensic examinations suggested that the location where the body was found wasn't the scene of the crime, as no tire tracks, fingerprints, or DNA traces could be secured. The autopsy also indicated that Frauke Liebs had died at the latest a few days after her last phone call. After the body was found, the police began searching the area for any clues, working through 700 leads and questioning over 1,000 people, including over 100 people who had contact with Frauke Liebs online. However, despite their best efforts and a reward of 7,500 euros being offered for information on the perpetrators, the case still remains unsolved.
El agresor sigue fregando, fregando y fregando.
También se mostraron videos en los que se refieren a que Luz Raquel manipuló las cámaras de vigilancia de su edificio, donde luego aparecieron las pintas con las amenazas que posteriormente denunció.
Luz Raquel Padilla was a dedicated mother and caretaker to her 11-year-old son, who suffered from severe autism and needed round-the-clock care. On July 16, 2022, she was brutally assaulted near her residence as attackers, allegedly led by her ex-partner, poured alcohol over her entire body and set her on fire.
También se mostraron videos en los que se refieren a que Luz Raquel manipuló las cámaras de vigilancia de su edificio, donde luego aparecieron las pintas con las amenazas prendieron fuego. Hasta ese momento, la mujer no contaba con el apoyo del programa Pulso de Vida, protección para las mujeres en situación de riesgo en Zapopan.
The brutal attack, resulting in burns covering 90% of her body, tragically claimed Luz's life. Witnesses recounted the horrifying scene of 3 men and a woman assaulting Luz in a park before fleeing. Prior to the attack, Luz had documented receiving several threats from a neighbor, disturbed by her son's noises. She even posted about it online and reported multiple times to authorities, pleading for protection. Despite her efforts, no action was taken, leaving Luz vulnerable to the brutal violence.
No se queden calladas, no tienen por qué aguantar a nadie, ni nada.
Additionally, she posted about a graffiti sketch, warning her of being burned alive, spray-painted in the common area of her apartment complex. The primary suspects in the case are her ex-partner and the neighbor who was disturbed by her son's noises. Although investigators are following all leads, the case of Luz Raquel Padilla remains unsolved.
है 2 तारीख को शाम को घर से निकला था 10:15 बजे दुष्यंत के नंबर से ही कॉल आया मुझे मार देंगे इनको 10 लाख शाम ने उसका गला काट दिया उसके बाद मैंने उसको थोड़ा में टॉर्चर किया और फेंक दी हमने.
It was the evening of May 2, 2018. A wealthy businessman from Jaipur by the name of Vivan Kohli was on his way to meet his Tinder date, Priya Seth. Priya was waiting for Vivan in a rented apartment. However, unbeknownst to her at that point, the person who was coming to meet her was neither a businessman nor named Vivan. The man behind the fake alias, Vivan Kohli, was actually Dashian Sharma, a 28-year-old married man living a double life. While at home, he was seen as a dedicated family man, devout and responsible. His online persona was entirely different. He would create a fake persona of a wealthy businessman and lure unsuspecting women into dates in order to escape his boring life. A few hours passed by, and suddenly Rameshwaram Sharma, Dashian's father, received a call on his phone. It was from Dushyant himself, crying and pleading for 1 million Indian rupees, begging that if the money wasn't provided, he'd be killed. The father, in hopes of saving his child, managed to transfer 300,000 Indian rupees, almost 1/3 of the demand, into his bank account. However, it was too late. On May 4, 2 days after the incident, the lifeless body of Dushyant Sharma was found in a suitcase and dumped outside a village near Jaipur. While the intention of Dushyant for using a fake alias was just a simple affair, his Tinder date had much more in mind. Priya Seth had a history of criminal activities, including running a fake escort website where she extorted large sums of money from wealthy businessmen. She lived with Eudoxia, with whom she was in a relationship, and Eudoxia, a regular friend. Together, they made a plan to kidnap and extort money from Dushyant, whom they thought of as a wealthy businessman. Priya matched with him and developed a relationship over the course of 3 months, before they both decided to finally meet in person. As soon as Dushyant entered Priya's place, he was ambushed by her, Dikshant and Lakshya. They threatened him and demanded a ransom from his family. Upon receiving the ransom demand, Dushyant's father made his best efforts to collect as much money as possible, managing to transfer 300k Indian rupees in hopes of saving his son. However, unbeknownst to him, Dushyant had already been killed. The trio realized that Dushyant wasn't the millionaire he had pretended to be, and fearing that the crime would come to light, decided to kill him. Initially, Dikshant attempted to strangle Dushyant, but when that failed, Lakshya suffocated him with a pillow. Dushyant still survived, and tried to fight the trio with every last breath, prompting Lakshya to ask for a knife, which he then used to stab Dushyant. They then chopped off his body into pieces, stuffed it into a suitcase, and threw it alongside the Delhi-Jaipur highway.
नाम भी पता नहीं था, टिंडर पे मिला था वो मुझे, उसने मेरे को अपना गलत नाम गलत पहचान बताई भी और ये बताया था कि बहुत पैसे वाला है वो। और मैं दीक्षांत के साथ में रह रही थी, उसके ऊपर कर्जा था तकरीबन 21 लाख का, उसे कोई चाहिए था ऐसा बंदा जिससे पैसे आ सके। तो हमने मिलकर प्लान बनाया था कि किसी को किडनैप करके फिरौती मांग के उसका मर्डर कर देंगे। मर्डर का प्लान पहले से ही था, किसके साथ होगा क्या होगा ये फिक्स नहीं था, लेकिन जब दुष्यंत मिला उसने अपने बारे में बताया, ऐसा झूठ बोला कि वो बहुत पैसे वाला है, तो हमने फिर उसको किडनैप करके उससे फिरौती मांगी, लेकिन बाद में पता लगा कि वो उसके पास कुछ नहीं है।
दुष्यंत के फादर ने आप लोगों को कुछ अकाउंट में पैसे ट्रांसफर करा दिए थे, फिर भी आपने उसको मार दिया, ऐसा
पैसे ट्रांसफर करने से पहले ही मार दिया था।
The case came to light after police recovered Dushyant's body the next day, and within 10 hours, they arrested Priya Seth, Dikshant and Lakshya Valia. Priya Seth, who was the mastermind of the plan, casually confessed to blackmailing thousands of men prior to the kidnapping and murder of Dushyant. Her interview was really disturbing, as she maintained a chillingly detached demeanor, displaying no remorse for her actions.
कैसे मारा आपने दुष्यंत को?
पहले उसका गला घोटा दीक्षांत ने, उसके बाद में वो नहीं मरा तो फिर लक्ष्य आया, लक्ष्य ने उसका मुंह तकिए से दबाया, फिर भी नहीं मरा, वो बेहोश हो गया। उसके बाद फिर दीक्षांत ने मुझसे चाकू मंगाया, मैंने उसे चाकू ला के दिया और दीक्षांत ने उसका गला काट दिया चाकू से।
आपने इन्वेस्टिगेशन ऑफिसर जो एक पहले आपके केस की थी उनको ये बोला कि आप वो चाकू अपने एक्स बॉयफ्रेंड को मारने के लिए लेकर आए थे?
मैंने वो चाकू कहाँ से? चाकू नहीं लाई थी। मेरा एक्स बॉयफ्रेंड एक नंबर का घटिया गिरा हुआ आदमी, उसने मेरे पे झूठा केस किया है, वो तो मर जाए तो अच्छा है। वैसे मुझे उसी का मर्डर करना था, लेकिन नहीं किया मैंने। ठीक है, वो चाकू मैं ऐसे ही लाई थी खुद की नस काटने के लिए, मैंने काट भी ली थी।
Priya's boyfriend, Dikshant claimed that he had no prior knowledge of Priya's plans until the very end. According to him, he only thought they were going to scare and threaten him in order to get the ransom and then leave him. However, it was Priya who planned the abduction and ultimately stabbed Dushyant.
सारी प्लानिंग इनकी थी, जो पहले इन्होंने वार किया है चाकू से वो भी इन्होंने की, लास्ट तक भी इन्होंने ही मारा। मैं इसी ग्राउंड पे हूँ, इसी ग्राउंड पे खड़ा रहूँगा।
पूरी प्लानिंग प्रिया की थी कि दीक्षांत की थी?
70% प्रिया की थी, 30% दीक्षांत की थी। प्रिया की पूरी प्लानिंग थी। प्रिया ने पहले दीक्षांत को यही बताया था कि अपने सिर्फ उसको डराएंगे, धमकाएंगे और छोड़ देंगे। सुबह उसको कहा भाई इसको मारना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो तुम तीनों फंस जाओगे।
Priya had a long history of criminal activities, including prostitution, ATM loots, extortion, false hour threats, and honey traps. She claimed to have duped men out of their money by pretending to be an agent who supplied female escorts. Priya expressed disappointment at being jailed for Dushyant's passing, believing that it would hinder her so-called social service.
किस तरह से फ्रॉड करते थे?
और इस तरह से करते थे कि पैसे लेके भाग जाते थे और कुछ प्रोवाइड नहीं कराते थे। एक्सटॉर्शन नहीं बोलते हैं इसको मैडम, आप पहले एक्सटॉर्शन की डेफिनेशन नेट पे सर्च कर लीजिए खुद। वो लोग कॉल गर्ल्स बुलाते हैं, उसके पैसे देते हैं, कैसे एक्सटॉर्शन कैसे कह सकते हैं आप इसको? डिफाइन कीजिए एक्सटॉर्शन को। मैं उन्हें ब्लैकमेल नहीं करती थी।
तो वो बेसिकली जो सर्विसेज आपसे लेने आते थे आप उनके पैसे ले लेते?
जी हाँ, वो अपनी बीवियों को घर पे छोड़कर हमसे, मैं गंदा वर्ड यूज़ नहीं कर सकती, लेकिन हमसे कॉल गर्ल्स लेने आते थे, तो हम उनसे पैसे ले लेते थे, बस उनको देते नहीं थे। तो आई थिंक ऐसे लोगों के साथ बड़ा अच्छा करते थे हम। थोड़ा समाज सेवा का काम कर रही थी मैं, तो रुक गया मेरा काम।
Priya, Dikshant and Lakshya were sentenced to life in prison on charges of kidnapping, extortion and murder. That concludes today's episode. Let me know what you think of region law cases down below. You can use the end screen here to watch the previous video.